I've muted you. Mute all. Share screen. And you should be able to see our a fantastic little arachnid here. Okay, so following on from all our other microbiological aspects, so these are macrobiological organisms, so you can actually see most of them with a naked eye. And
Ruben,
yes,
the notice that this is being recorded is still on the screen over the parasitology.
can you see that? I've changed.
Did you click got it?
Did I click got it?
It's come off my screen. I clicked got it, and it's been removed.
Can you see a green
Yep, parasite. Yep,
parasites?
yep.
Sorry, Ruben, it was me. I didn't realize I had to click got it.
Okay. Okay. Anyway, the idea of these amazing parasites and the systems that they had evolved to be able to multiply and spread, and this is what this is about. And some of it looks a bit gruesome, and it is, but I think for people should know about it. So we have these relationships, and every living organism has got its own parasites. So this photo is from the Cameroon, and he's infested by this round worm. It's called Ascaris. We'll get to the worms later, but I just thought it was nice, an interesting photo to start with. So, what is a parasite? It's something that lives in or on a host. Now, a host is where it gets its food, and sometimes the host doesn't worry about it, but sometimes it's at the expense of the host's nutrition itself. So all living things have parasites, which cause problems, and some of these parasites are easily treated. Easily, some not so much, and most of them are found in the tropics and the subtropics, but we have parasites all around the world, even in Melbourne. So what did the ancients know? The lots of documentation about parasites in history, and Greeks, Romans, Arabs, Babylonians, Assyrians, they've all recorded in their particular languages and their scriptures, where they wrote on clay tablets about parasites. So there are three main classes of parasites that affect humans.
Are there human parasites, Ruben?
You could say that. Yes.
Are a lot of them in Parliament?
Sorry?
Are a lot of these parasites in Parliament?
Yes. Yes. I'd rather not go there, though. So we have the protozoa, the single cell, the helminths, they're more like the worms, and the ectoparasites. Ecto means external parasites on the surface of us. So protozoa, they're single cells, so they're microscopic. They are generally free living in water mostly, and they also can be parasitic. So the helminths are the larger, now the multicellular, not single cellular, and they're generally visible. And they are these worms, lots of them. And the ectoparasites are the external ones that live on the surface of our bodies. And we all have or will have them. And blood-sucking arthropods are part of them. And the arthropods, of course, and most of these are the ones with exoskeletons, like say flies and spiders they have exoskeletons. So the protozoa, single cell Giardia. Now they're flagellated, so these are the flagella, singular is flagellum, and they move, so they can actually swim around. And they are when they're move into the body, they reproduce really quickly, and just one organism one individual can cause massive problems, very serious problems in humans. So these Giardia, this is what they look like. As far as I know, it's a photo, and they live in the human intestine, and they occur generally through a fecal oral entry. So human feces, especially in places where they grow rice or other vegetables, whatever, but they use human feces as fertilizer. And if these guys are within that feces and they're exposed to air, they form little cysts, so they don't die. And once, if the vegetables, for example, are not washed properly or not cooked properly, then the cysts open up inside, and then off they go. So, and they could also be in water, and people drink them. And they also say person-to-person contact. That one, I'm not exactly sure. I found that statement, but I'm not sure how that happens. So now, Giardia is so they live inside, but this is very good. Now, the CDC, by the way, is an American group, and they have these wonderful, very simple, they're easy to understand drawings. So I've used a few of them. So down the bottom here, you see that's the cyst. So that saves and stops them from dehydrating. They open up, and these are the trophozoites, and they then reproduce, and under certain conditions they become cysts again. So by eating, drinking, go through, and then the cycle continues on. Now, you also notice in these diagrams they have these I's and the D's, and this is the infective stage, the I, but it's also used as a diagnostic stage. So the doctors can get samples, or health workers, depending where in the world you are, and they can diagnose the problem by doing that. So they can also, besides infecting humans, other animals as well. So these individuals, they become infected through ingestion, but through contaminated food. That's the biggest one. And soil and water. Again, if you're working with the soil on your hands and you don't wash your hands before eating, then you can easily, these are microscopic, so they wouldn't even see them. And so again, it's from contamination, and it's generally through the feces. Now, these symptoms are interesting. Within 2 days, you get violent diarrhea, excess gas, stomach cramps, upset stomach, nausea. And then because of the diarrhea, they dehydrate quickly. And because the material in the gut moves through quickly. They have nutritional loss, so they may need really immediate treatment, especially with drips to stop them dehydrating. After a couple of days, 2-4 days, with the diarrhea, the opposite occurs, and they get so severely constipated and with a very painful gas. Well, the gas itself doesn't give the pain, just the amount of gas that's being produced. So the typical infection can be slight and then resolve between 2 and 6 weeks, but sometimes it lasts much longer, and people are hospitalized for quite a period of time. But for 2 to 6 weeks, having this diarrhea and then this terrible constipation, that's not a good thing either. Now, there's a problem, even in Australia, we have Giardia. I found these posters. They're called Punami warning, code brown, floater around, and this is from America. Don't swim if you have diarrhea. This is in pools. This is an American pools as far as, oh no, this one's a Victorian one. Don't swim if you have diarrhea, wash your hands and so on. Change your nappies, the baby's nappies, that is. And before I move on, quite a few years ago now, I can't remember when, Sydney had to stop their water supply from one of their dams because their chlorination process broke down and Giardia was reproducing, and they had to kill off the Giardia because people all of a sudden in Sydney, and I can't remember what part of it, were getting very sick with Giardia through the water that they were drinking. It got resolved fairly quickly though. So yeah, they have to be super careful. Amoeba, you've all heard the word, I'm sure. They're also protozoa, single celled, and proto means first. Zoa or zoo part means animal, but they're not really animals. They're single-celled organisms, and they live in our blood, and that can also work their way through tissues, and they're transmitted by arthropod vectors. Say a mosquito or a sandfly can transmit this, and so we have this situation called amoebic dysentery, and the actual amoeba that causes this is this Entamoeba histolytica, and the disease is called amoebiasis, sorry, and so amoebic dysentery, and it's not nice. So what happens is we get this worldwide, and they estimated between 40 and 100,000 people a year die. So the symptoms from mild diarrhea to dysentery, blood, mucus in the stools. When the parasite reaches the bloodstream, it can spread through the body, where it can end up in the liver, and you end up with these massive amoebic liver abscesses that doesn't do the liver any good at all. So this is how what happens is, so some organism has this amoebic dysentery, the cysts again. Now, I don't know if you remember, we talked about some bacteria, we talked about the microbiological aspects of microbiology talk I did. Many organisms form a cyst, and these cysts are very hardy, and they're very difficult to kill. And so, and all amoeba, as far as I know, when conditions for survival are not good, they form a cyst, and then when the conditions improve, they come out of the cyst and they multiply. So if a person eats or ingests some, and they go into into the intestines, and they reproduce asexually. So they just divide. And so, and then they're in the stools, in the feces, and from there they can also now they come out, and the active part of this amoeba is called the trophozoite, and the trophozoite makes the stools very soft and liquidy, but they don't actually infect another person. It's because if you ingest the trophozoite, the stomach acids will just knock it off, but the cysts are untouched by the acid, and so they go, and then they infect, and once they're in there, and they form these hepatic abscesses.
Can I interrupt you? I got that email of yours. Shall I send it to Richard Solomon?
Yes, please. Not Solomon. It's Shield.
Okay, I'll look for him. Okay.
Yes. And once you've done it, I'll text you then to have another look.
I haven't yet. I haven't found his name yet. Hold on. Just keep going.
Okay. Please try again. Okay. Okay. Thanks, Eugene. Now, malaria, you've all heard of that. It's produced by a different sort of organism. It's called a plasmodium, single-celled organism. And there are about 200 species of plasmodium which are known, and 11 of those infect humans. Most animals apparently can have their specific malarial plasmodium. Now, they always have two hosts. One, a vector, which is the organism that transmits it, and in our case, a mosquito, and then a host, and it's usually a vertebrate. And vertebrate is one with a backbone. And this is what they look like. And what they do is actually they rupture the red blood cells. And now that causes problems, because if you have a severe malaria, one, you don't get enough oxygen, but two, the red blood cells, which have been ruptured, then are not as pliable as a normal red blood cell, and they can clog up capillaries, and that causes all sorts of issues all around the body. So this is a map of where malaria is found around the world. It's interesting that in South America, there's a section here, and I've been there, and the name of the country eludes me for a second. It's not coming. Anyway, so all of South America, Central America, have got it. Most of Africa, except the northern part. All these Southeast Asia, Middle East, all the way down to New Guinea. So there's a big worldwide problem with malaria. While I was looking for that map, I found another map, malarial endemic areas, and this is now chloroquine is what they use to knock it off, or to prevent it, really. And the chloroquine, the resistance, is this darker pink. The lighter pink is chloroquine sensitive, and with the none is there isn't any malaria area. But the chloroquine resistance has built up. So these plasmodia are just moving around the world, and they're resistant to the thing, to the chemical, if you like, the substance that will knock them off. So the sensitive ones are just these light pink ones, where they haven't been, where the chloroquine will still work on the plasmodium. Interesting. Malaria is moved around by the Anopheles mosquito, and these are the only ones, the only genus that can transmit the malarial plasmodium. Now, what happens is, there are other viruses, by the way, I put these in as well, what I'm going to say, mosquitoes can also pass these on. So the West Nile virus, and lots of strains of those. There's encephalitis, dengue fever, Rift Valley fever, yellow fever, and elephantiasis. And all these are mosquito-borne. Because we talk about mosquitoes, but I'll throw in some information. But with respect to the malaria, the plasmodium, what happens is it's got an amazing life cycle, and it becomes so well ingrained. It's complicated. What's a person with malaria is mosquito wants some blood. By the way, it's a females. You know that it's only the females that suck the blood because they need it for laying eggs, for producing eggs. So the mosquito comes along, sucks the blood out of a small amount out of a human that's got malaria. Now, these were gametocytes, and they are swallowed by the mosquito. I'll break these down as I go along. Now, a gamete is a reproducing cell, like with us, an ova, an ovum, or a sperm. They're gametes. The word, the suffix "cyte" means cell. So these are the reproducing cells, which are swallowed by the mosquito, and they're freely roaming around the body of the person who's infected. Now, the sporozoites are then, the gametocytes form these tiny sporozoites. It's the next stage. And so it's from the word, the spore aspects. And the zoite, as in zoo, Z-O-O, as in zoo, but it's not zoo, means animal. That's where the word zoological gardens, so on. It's from animals. So this acts like an animal, and then it's produced and transferred to the next human. And this is where, so what happens is these sporozoites move into the mosquito's salivary glands. And I don't know if you know that and you probably all had mosquito bites, you don't know it happened until it's happened, and you get an itch, a little swelling, a bit of red, and it's an itch. Okay, so what happens is when a mosquito bites you, puts its mouthpiece in, it's not a bite, by the way, it's a puncture, it's a sting, and it puts a drop of saliva under the skin, and the saliva has an anticoagulant in it. So the blood that gets sucked up picks up some of this anticoagulant, and then that goes into the stomach of the mosquito and gets digested and so on. But this drop of saliva will also have some sporozoites if it's carrying the malaria, plasmodium. Okay, so these sporozoites, then once they're in the body, they go to the liver, and within the liver, the schizonts are produced. That's the next stage. Then these move into the red blood cells where male and female gametes are produced. Okay, so there's a diagram. But it's so many levels, so complex. And so once the male and female, the schizons don't hurt us at all. And the sporozoites don't hurt us. It's the mechanism of getting into the red blood cells. So once the gametes, that's the sex cells, so these gametes are then taken up by mosquitoes into the stomach and become sporozoites. So it's just cycling through, and the sporozoites move to the salivary gland. I don't think I mixed anything up here. No, I think I'm right. Okay, so once they're in the salivary gland and then they're transferred. Okay, so this is how complicated it is, but it does make sense. Here they're labeled A, B, and C. So mosquito here takes a needle, injects the sporozoites, they go to the liver cells, get the schizons, they rupture. Within the humans, it goes into the red blood cells, and they rupture here, and it's continuing on and on. They get the gametocytes, they're the gametes, and these end up being sucked up by another mosquito, and then this cycle starts up, and even more names. And by the way, an oocyst, the oo means female, the female part of it, and within that, all these sporozoites are released, and then they go. Well, this is within the stomach of the mosquito, and then they go around. Oh gosh. So the erythrocytic cycle means our blood. The sporogenic is where the spores are produced, and the erythrocytic means outside the blood system, so it's in the liver. Now, sickle cell anemia is a genetic disease which it actually helps people survive. It's a disease where the red blood cells are when they don't have oxygen in them, change, and they become like a sickle, like a comma. So what happens is, if both parents have the gene, there's a 1 in 4 chance the child is born with sickle cell anemia. And that people with sickle cell anemia don't get malaria. There's another condition, another genetic condition called thalassemia, with a number of different thalassemias. And then inherited also, it's a genetic issue in Mediterranean, Southeast Asia, and Pacific. And they also, it's rare for a thalassemic person to get malaria. So they have some resistance. And so it seems the proposition is that these genetic diseases have come about as an adaptation, an adaptive response to malaria. But you get thalassemia in places like Greece and Italy and some of those areas there, whereas the sickle cell anemia are in other areas in Africa especially. So what other mosquito-borne diseases are there? So they're called bacteria, or viruses, or parasites, and they're all transmitted. And about 700 million people get a mosquito-borne illness every year, and about 1 million die. So we're lucky in Australia. We have very, very few issues of that. Now, mosquitoes can carry diseases, it's that. In Australia, I looked it up, and we do have some. So the Murray Valley encephalitis, the Ross River virus, the Barmah forest virus, and the dengue virus are carried by mosquitoes. That's along here. We down here in Melbourne, very, very few people get anything because it's just too cold for the particular Anopheles mosquito, and some of the other ones that carry these. Now, Japanese encephalitis, I threw this in because it's current. If you remember, we had those pigs, and lots of pigs were killed off because they were carrying the Japanese encephalitis virus, and this is related to the West Nile, the Zika, the Murray Valley encephalitis, the dengue, and the yellow fever. Do you remember Zika was affecting people in, I think it was Brazil, somewhere in South America, and and women, pregnant women who got the Zika virus produced babies that were, I think they were deformed. There was a problem with them. And no, they had microencephaly, very small heads. And I don't know how many of them lived. So there are about 68,000 cases of encephalitis across. By the way, the cephalus part of this word means the head, the brain. N is inside, and itis is infection. So it's a brain infection. Southeast Asia, Western Pacific, so it's quite common there. And the virus is maintained.
Ruben, just itis is inflammation, not infection. Just to.
What did I say?
You said infection.
My apologies. You're actually right. Yes, yes, that was it. What the hell was in my head and what came out was not the same thing. Thank you. The virus, yeah, so we've got this, it's all mosquito borne, but also water birds are involved because they will carry the virus large distances. So water birds, for example, with this piggery business, if there's water, some wetlands around the piggery, the mosquitoes will also get a feed from the water birds. They'll also pass on the disease, but then the water birds fly on, and other mosquitoes further down somewhere will pick up the virus through the bird again and move it on. And for some reason, this particular virus likes the pigs. They don't reproduce in the birds, but the birds just carry them, the vectors. So the pigs, and they all sort of work together in a way. All right, let's move on to the worms, the parasitic worms. And so there are 4 groups of them. So some of you may have heard of these names, like the roundworms of the Ascaris, flatworms, the trematodes, tapeworms, the cystodes, and the flatworms are the 2 sorts, by the way, the trematodes and the turbularia, and they're different. And they find their way to a host through contaminated food, water, soil, mosquito bites, and even sex acts can pass on these worms. As before, if vegetables that are grown and use if eaten raw, they may contain these eggs because they can't go through feces as well. Here's some pictures of what they might look like. So this is the turbularia. It's one of the flatworms. Here's another one. And oh, here's the tapeworm. The tinea refers to tapeworms. Tinea saginata, from memory, is the one that attacks, infects pigs. Fasciola hepatica, these are the ones that go to the liver. The magna just means it's big. So plants can also be contaminated with the flatworms. And so undercooked meats, and it can transmit tapeworms. And that's why we have inspectors in the I'm forgetting words.
Abattoirs.
Abattoirs, thank you. I'm getting too old for this, I think. Some flatworms, okay, are also known as hookworms because they hook onto the skin and then work their way through the skin into the body. And some worms include guinea worms, and they're transmitted by mosquitoes and flies that bite. And I'll show you some pictures later. Now, the Ascaris are the round worms. The very first photo of the African boy, they were Ascaris. Now, the SPP is the plural of species. So if you have one P, it's just one species. The double P is a group of species. So there's a stack of them, but depends on where. Now, they can grow from anywhere, but depending on the species, 1.5 centimeters, not even an inch, to about 50 centimeters. And in the old currency, 50 centimeters is just under 2 meters. So under, yeah, just under 2 meters. They have a very complex life cycle.
20 inches, Ruben.
In inches, done. 30 centimeters is 12 inches. The 12 and other.
20.
What am I doing? What am I doing? 1 feet.
2.5 20s.
2.5 feet. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. No. That, yeah. Okay. So here's a diagram. Now, Ascaris is, these are for humans and pigs. So this is a tapeworm, and the males and females are in the small intestine. The female produces eggs, and these eggs are passed out in the feces, as she can produce up to 200,000 eggs a day. So the eggs mature, and if they're eaten, they can be ingested, and usually through the meat if it's not cooked properly, and they penetrate the tissue of the intestine into the bloodstream. These guys then go to the lung, and the eggs become juveniles, and they migrate into the capillaries and the alveoli, and they cause the animal that's got them to cough, and then they cough this out, and then they're eaten. They're picked up by others, or they just swallow them again, and the cycle starts again. So all these parasites have these complex systems. And here's a round worm in the intestine. You can see it. It's a drawing. Sorry, I've got a message here. No, nothing. Okay, and here's some giant roundworm up to 35 centimeters. Wouldn't want those inside you. Here's a roundworm in small intestine, just clogs you up completely. And there's a coin, American coin. I don't know what it is. Now, and these guys, they accumulate in the intestine, and this little kid, you can see, and that's what they look like when they're removed. And then there's a guinea worm being extracted. I'll get to guinea worm in a minute. This is an interesting map, neglected tropical diseases distribution. That not much is happening medically to do like these ones here. Very little apparently is being done research-wise to sort them out. So they're called neglected tropical diseases. So these dark blue ones are where there's one present, one of these multiple diseases. And then you've got 2, 3, 4, and more, 5 or more. So in East Africa, this is Brazil, sorry, that's Africa there. But in Brazil, they've got more than 5 or more of these diseases, which not much is happening with. All these many countries in Africa, even here in our part of the world, they've got the yellow, they've got at least about 3. In India, all of these. Then if you go to Australia, New Zealand, all of North Africa, Europe, there are none. It's interesting, even though these are on the same latitude, they've got all these amazing diseases, and could be a population thing, but I think it's the medical people aren't doing anything about it. A big shame. Let's look at tapeworms. So these are in the phylum Platyhelminthes. The platy means flat, like a platypus, a flat beak. And the helminthes are just a group of worms. And they live in the digestive tracts of vertebrates as adults, but within the bodies as juveniles. So the ones I showed you before, they were in the body and they grew large amounts. These guys are a little bit different, but they're in the same place. Apparently, about around 1,000 species have been described. There are probably many more, and it can be parasitized by at least one species. So they're all vertebrate species. All vertebrates have at least one tapeworm species that gets them. And so these are the ones that affect us. So Timiosolium, that's coming from pig. Beef is Saginata. Dogs get Echinococcus granulosus, and even fish have this. I'm not even trying to pronounce that one. And can also be in food that's not prepared properly. Tinea saginata can grow up to 65 feet or 20 meters. That's the one within cattle. Okay, here's some photos. Now, each of these little bars is an individual cell. And each of these little bars, each of these groups, not a cell, sorry, not a cell, it's a segment. You can see it here as well. That's the head. The heads vary. There's one there, I put a couple in. Some of them have just these hooks, some of them have these suckers, and this one just has suckers, the top right, and this one has hooks and suckers. And these segments here grow and mature, and they produce eggs that have male and female sex cells, and the eggs then are released regularly. This dog is infected by at least one tapeworm, and being in the intestine, the tapeworm uses the nutrients, the nutrients that the dog would use to grow, for themselves to grow. Here's some more, another head, more segmentation. So they all vary, and these is full of eggs here. This is one of these segments. Now, this one here came from a website, dogbreedinfo.com, and this shows, this is the one that attacks dogs. And these are samples of the eggs. Okay, so I'll put in some diagrams. So we have the primary host. So within this host, there's a hook or a sucker or both, and you have these proglottids, and these are the segments, and they get bigger and bigger and bigger, and they're full of mature eggs, which come out in the feces. Now, if in our situation, our feces go into the sewage system and probably not used to grow vegetables with, but in many countries, as I said before, they use human feces as manure, and so they grow and they come out of the, say, the cow or the animal. In this case, a cow will eat it if this is human, and they will eat the grass. It gets into the cow, and then it moves into the meat, into the muscle. Now, this is where their meat inspectors check, and they look for these growths, which are human, if they eat uncooked meat or not properly cooked meat, will develop. And here's an X-ray of a human with a tapeworm. So you've got these. So Genata is the one in the beef, in cattle. This is the one in pig. Much the same. And these you get, they look a bit different.
Sorry, Ruben, I have to go. Thanks.
Okay, you can get the rest later. Okay, thanks for coming, Peter.
I've got a short question. When somebody orders, say, a steak that's raw in a restaurant, is
Yes.
that undercooked, or is that cooked enough?
If it's blue, it's undercooked. Is that what you mean?
Yes.
Yes. But I think in Australia you're pretty safe because our inspection system is very good.
Okay.
And you don't normally hear of tapeworms in Australia. I think you're safe. Okay.
What who bring their own food and don't get caught? I mean,
Yeah, I mean, if you go, I mean, we go to a supermarket or we go to a butcher, and the butcher would see if there's a problem, because you can see these they're called oncospheres. This is where the little cysts live until they're eaten. Yeah.
dangerous.
No, we're okay. We're okay here.
Yeah, that's good.
This is where, again, different hosts. We have the dog, the sheep. Now, the thing is, a dog will have it, can have it, and poo in the wherever the sheep are in the grass, and it dries up, but the cysts don't dry up. The sheep, the goat, the pig, the cattle, whatever, the sheep here, they will eat the grass and eat the cysts, which then develop, and you get this cycle here. And it just got, so this has the cysts, oh, I didn't mention, they're called hydatid cysts. They can be in the liver, they can be in the lung, they could be in the meat, and so on. So this is a useful one to look at. It's called the guinea worm. Now, the guinea worm is transmitted by a water flea. So someone drinks, somewhere in the world, these tiny, tiny little fleas which are in the water. The fleas are digested. The flea doesn't want to be drunk, but anyway, they're digested, and then the worms, the larvae of the worms which are in the flea aren't digested, and they come out, they grow to about 1 meter long, and they move through the body, and they usually move into the lower limbs, and after about a year, it develops a blister. A blister is developed in the leg or the foot, and it comes out through the worm starts coming out through this blister. Now, apparently, it's a lot of pain. It feels very hot, and the person who's having this, the poor person who's having this guinea worm coming out through its foot or leg, rushes into the nearest river or lake or whatever they've got to cool down. But the worm then releases clouds of larvae in the water. The fleas which live in the water ingest these larvae, and the cycle begins again with the drinking of the fleas. So these very complex cycles, you see quite a few of them, are, again, we don't have any in Australia, but the actually evolutionary cycle that's involved is amazing. Here's some guinea worms. And when he starts coming out, this is through the stomach here. These are through the feet. That's through a foot. So what they do is they take a mat or a small stick, and when the worm starts coming out, they wrap it around. You can't pull it. They're not pulling it out. They're only straightening it to show the photographer. They have to wait till it comes out on its own, and they keep rolling it up on this. Because if you leave part of it inside, then the whole thing will get infected. Now we have and external parasites that live on our skin, and the hosts, of course, and they feed. The whole life cycle there. So they're completely dependent on their host, and if you have one or two of them, you can survive. Sometimes there are thousands of them, and then the animal or even human, they become very, very sick. So here's some examples. Now, fleas, they're small. They are mammalian and avian ectoparasites. So avian are birds. Again, ecto is on the outside. Their bodies are flat, so they can move between the hairs or the feathers, and they have very strong claws, which prevents them from being dislodged. It's really, you can scratch, but you won't move them. And they don't have wings, and they have these special mouth parts which can pierce skin, and the idea is to suck blood. And the hind legs have the most incredible mechanism and design that can actually jump about 50 times their body length. Incredible. Now, we are not generally infested, because they don't generally go for humans, they go for feathered or furred animals. But if there aren't any, humans will pick them up. Where are they? So they can live for 3 months or so without feeding, but the female needs to have blood to lay her eggs. And but it also had this feeding of the blood stimulates the reproductive process in the males and the females, but they can't do it without the blood. So if the host of the flea is a carrier of a human disease, then the disease can be spread to onto a person by the blood feed. And this is what happened with the Great Plague in Europe, England. The fleas are the ones carrying, sorry, the rats were the ones carrying the disease. The fleas move from rat to rat, but sometimes humans got in the way, and it was the fleas biting the humans, passing on the disease. So this is what they look like, and it's these hind legs that have incredible mechanism for jumping very, very, very far. So some of the diseases that fleas can cause: bubonic plague, the 3 different types of typhus fever, and they can also transmit parasites like tapeworms, because remember the sex part of the life cycle is within the blood, and but it's mainly affecting pets, not humans so much. So here's the hair of I think it's probably a dog. Each one of those is a flea. A bird, each dot is a flea. The cat, and there's the flea. There are also things called bed bugs. And they're small, they don't have any wings, and they're usually where humans are, and they feed on blood, human blood. They like it. So if you've ever been bitten by a bed bug, a bit of food for themselves, you'll know about it. They are nocturnal. They rest during the day and they're active at night, and they are opportunistic. They'll bite in the daytime if they haven't had a feed for a while. Now, lice are very, very common, and there are about 3,000 species. They don't have wings, and they just move around. And in humans, they get head lice or body lice or crabs, which are pubic lice. And the body lice actually can transmit the typhus. Now, most of these lice are scavengers, and they feed on skin, usually skin that's shed. We're shedding our skin all the time, so they'll feed on that, and all sorts of other things. They also feed on sebaceous secretions. Now, we have sebaceous glands right through our body, and that's it's like an oil that keeps the skin nice and pliable. And they also feed on blood. So the lice are quite common. And this thing here is called a nit, and this is an egg of a louse. And this is what they look for when kids have their hair tested at school, for example, and they look for those. And there are shampoos you can get which get rid of them. This is I think it's a drawing. I couldn't quite work out whether it's a photo or a drawing, but of lice on hair, a great infestation. So they go through this. Here's a net. They emerge, they molt, they go through a series of molts. I'm not sure if you know what a molt is. It's where the body grows bigger than the exoskeleton, and so there's a split that happens, and the skeleton falls off, and then they keep growing. It happens in all of these. I mean, in crabs and lobsters, and you name it, they all do the same thing. The male's a bit bigger, they reproduce, the female lays the nets, and then the cycle continues. And now that there are mites, they're tiny, and they're microscopic, and they're arachnids. So like spiders, they have 8 legs. And they range from 0.1 to 6 millimeters, so they're very small. And about 48,000 species. So that all sorts of animals will get these mites feeding on their blood. They're dust mites, which are so small that people develop an allergy to them because they bring them in, hay fever, asthma, eczema. And the mites are usually found in warm and humid locations, including beds. So bed mites. And it's currently thought that the mite droppings are what causes the hypersensitivity to them. So here's what they look like. And these are actual photos. This is a microscopic one. This is there are 3-dimensional microscopes now that can take photos like this. There are scabies, and scabies are not nice. I have been infected in America with scabies, and it took ages to work out what the problem was. They're so rare in Australia. They're very itchy. So these mites, they're everywhere, apparently, but we don't hear about them here. This is what they look like down the bottom. There's another photo there. And where there's skin-to-skin contact between people, or can happen in aged care, childcare, residential facilities. I think I picked it up from a bed we slept in somewhere in America. Now, this is a model. The female, she's a few millimeters long, she burrows into the top layer of the skin, the ectoderm. There's a layer of cells and then this ectoderm. And she lays eggs. That's a hair, a model of the hair. So she'll lay eggs, and after a few days, they hatch and they travel under the skin. And sometimes you see the tracks. And they can live, a female can live for about 2 months, about 3 eggs a day. And she can travel about 3 centimeters a minute through the skin. Okay. I don't suggest any of you go out and try it. It wasn't very nice. And you know what? Eventually, one of the doctors said, this is what I've got. And you can go to the chemist and get this, Peter's now gone, but he told me the name of it. It's a liquid that you put into a hot bath and you soak in it for a period of time, and that kills them. Now, ticks are also arachnids, the 8-legged ones, and there are lots of them in the bush in Australia. And these tick bites are usually not a problem, but if they're carrying something, bacteria or some other organism, they can result in paralysis, tick typhus, and allergic reactions as well. And in America, especially Lyme's disease, they carry this bacterium. There's a guy I know who did the North America track from south to north, and he got bitten by a tick and he got Lyme disease, and he was sick for a very long time. I haven't seen him for years, so I don't know how long it took. But and the tick paralysis, it's uncommon, he says, but it's not infectious. It's a neurological problem. And you notice it by what's called ataxia. It's a lack of muscle control or coordination. And that it progresses to ascending paralysis. And it's caused by a neurotoxin in the saliva of some of these ticks. So the neurotoxin, it's a toxin, it's a poison that attacks the nervous system. And it's similar to the Guillain-Barré syndrome, and this is which attacks the body's immune system. With the immune system attacks the nerve of the body. And here is a photo of a series. These are photos. It is a photo, but different sizes of the ticks. And so you get the male and the female, and when the female is pregnant, full of eggs, she is really massive. There are a few photos, dogs with the ticks. And here's a photo of the engorged tick. So you can see the difference with some of these that I haven't had enough yet, but all these here look like that. Sorry, not eggs, engorged with blood, which she uses to produce the eggs. Here's another animal, and another one. There's a cow full of ticks. Now, this is the last link. Okay, to 11 o'clock, and the 10-minute YouTube thing I'd like to show you, but I think I didn't tick one of the boxes, so I have to stop the share. And when hopefully I can share the screen again. Oh, Richard, you made it. Okay, I need to tick this box. And
are the 10 most invasive parasites in the world. Despite their size, these tiny
That's coming
terrorizers
through.
will leave you digging into your own skin.
sorry,
It's not coming through.
it's not. Oh,
Oh.
sorry. Well, I'll share it. Gosh, I got to. All right. Now, can you see that? The first. Can you see the first?
Yeah, we can see that's the beginning of your.
The very first slide.
Yes.
All right. I'll go down the bottom. Okay. Now try this.
Here are the 10 most invasive parasites in the world. Despite their size,
Can you see
Still
that?
not coming- No, it's not coming through.
We're getting the sound, but not the picture.
That's weird. All right. I'll leave it. It's this is all about parasites that affect that just parasites. It says the 10 most invasive parasites in the world. It's good cringe value, and can leave it. So let's. I'll stop that. I don't know why it's not showing. You've got in the notes. You've got the link. Spend 10 minutes having a look at that. It's good fun, so long as you don't have any of them. And so I hope you got some, you enjoyed that. I don't know the word enjoyed, but I hope you got something out of that talk. And it's fun every time
Still starting to get itches all over the body.
yes. Yes. So, I mean, again, if you're bitten by a mosquito in Melbourne, the chances of you picking up any of those is non-existent, because we just don't have most of those conditions that you saw. But it was really, really interesting putting that together. And are we still recording? Yes, we are. Okay. Anyway,
One other question, Ruben. When food comes from overseas, how safe is it compared to food that's grown or cultivated wherever in Australia? For example, in cans, in
well, if they
fruit, vegetables.
if it comes in a can, it's usually cooked in the can. If it comes in a bottle or anything that's been processed, I'd say it's perfectly fine. If it's raw food, I'll be a bit more wary. If it comes from America, I mean, at the moment, I love oranges, so the oranges I buy now are from America. I'm not worried about that, but I don't know what else comes from. I don't know what else that's raw that comes from other parts of the world. I mean, if there are lots of, if you buy coffee, if you buy, I don't know, spices, herbs, they all have been processed in some way.
Well, there are increasing amounts of food coming, say, from the Philippines, from Thailand, from
yes, but what sort of food?
Fruit, vegetables.
Are they?
Sardines.
Yeah, I've seen them. Yeah.
Which beans?
Sardines.
Oh, okay. Are they raw?
The sardines would be cooked, but I'm just the answer.
Well, again,
I've seen they're raw.
By cooking them, you don't eat that. You don't eat beans raw unless you have green beans, but you don't eat beans raw. If they're cooked properly, like everything, it just kills them. If there's anything in there, and I don't know what sort of inspection there is of food that comes in. I'm sure there is something. I really don't know, but it's a good question. I don't think we'd get raw meat coming in. We send a lot of meat overseas, but as live cattle, live sheep, especially to the Middle East. But Indonesia gets a lot of our meat too. But they would have their own inspectors there.
Okay, so all depends on health inspectors doing their job.
Yeah. I mean, if it comes in a bottle or a tin or a can or it's been processed, I wouldn't worry in the slightest because it's been processed.
Okay.
And probably cooked. And the high temperature will knock any of these out.